Hi, everybody. Good evening. Welcome. Good evening, everyone. My name is Maddie Shirbondi, and I'm a program assistant here at the Fine Arts Work Center. Most of you are here because you're participating in one of our amazing summer workshops, so you already know what's going on tonight. But for those of you who aren't, for 9 weeks every summer, the Work Center hosts week-long open enrollment visual arts and writing workshops. If anyone here is interested in learning more, you can ask me or any of the staff on hand after this event. If you're here longer than this week, you should really think about taking one of our workshops. I promise you would not regret it. One of our favorite parts of the summer programs is that every week, our world-class faculty mesmerize our audiences with presentations and talks. Tonight, we're going to hear from 3 faculty members: poet Mark Conway, printmaker Jim Stroud, and writer Nick Flynn. Mark and Nick will both read from their books, and Jim will make a presentation about his work, and they'll all then conduct a Q&A with the audience. So before we begin, a few items of housekeeping and other items of interest. Books by Mark and Nick will be available for sale at the back of the room, and they will be signing their books also at the back of the room after the event. Books by other members of this year's faculty will also be for sale in our bookstore and at the back of the room, as well as some very pretty Fogg merchandise, so be sure to check that out too. The new Hudson D. Walker Gallery will be open after the event. Right now, we're showing an amazing exhibit called Density's Glitch, which features work by former Fogg Fellows. The proceeds of all work sold will go to support Fogg's programs, so be sure to check that out after the event. I would like to give a big shout out to East End Books, who have helped us stock and set up our bookstore. Also, if you are taking a writing class this week and you're interested in reading at our Student Nights open readings on Thursday, please remember to sign up in the lounge across the decked courtyard. There is a sign-up sheet. Restrooms are located down that hallway. And finally, please do us all a favor and turn your cell phones to silent. We're going to start with poet Mark Conway, a new member of the Fogg Summer faculty, who's teaching a course this week called What You're Willing to Discover. Mark's most recent book of poetry, Rivers of the Driftless Region, was published by 4-Way Books in 2019. His work has appeared in the Paris Review, Slate, Boston Review, American Poetry Review, Kenyon Review Online, Ploughshares, the PBS NewsHour and Bomb. He teaches at the Loft in Minneapolis and lives in rural Minnesota. Lyricality praises his work's momentary awareness of infinity and eternity, and how Mark's language somehow still contains concepts nearly impossible to understand. His poetry hits readers in the head and heart with image after stunning image and pushes them to wrestle with the phenomenal entities of absence, rage, and laughter. Please give a warm Fogg welcome to Mark Conway.
Brushing malachite and yellow ochre onto vellum, Brother Matthew Paris is bent over in his medieval cell, working to bring the visible world to an end. He's doing his part, illuminating a map so we all can walk to Jerusalem, or imagine walking there. Then we'll finally live, all of us, in paradise. Obviously, not everyone can afford to take to the road. So he's creating detailed guides to give stay-at-home pilgrims the chance to travel from Oxford town to Palestine in their heads. We all can take the 10,000 plus 10,000 steps in our bedrooms or on local roads, plotting out our progress as we go. Some of us make cucumber sandwiches and pretend we're eating under palms, sweating from the midday heat. We keep going until we can kneel and kiss the perfumed earth of the imagined Jerusalem. Once that's done, the end of days can finally begin. Brother Matthew knows revelation is always all about us, on our tongues, in our hair, like a fog we can almost hold. Imminent. Imminence. The day will come when our eyes clear and we'll look around to see we're there, here. All we have to do is destroy the world. I sleep my way to pilgrimage. I sleep all day. At night I walk to Jerusalem with maps I've GPS'd and overlay on top of North Dakota fields. My Italy is Winnipeg. A laser lights the sacred path. Rows of corn form the harbor in Calais or the St. Bernard Pass, depending on my relative position in medieval France. In the end, a field will stand for Palestine. I can't get into the Holy Land. The Middle East is sick with airborne plague. In times like these, you have to improvise, make meccas of your own. So I thought the best way to introduce this strange topic was to plunge you into the middle of the Middle Ages and get a little acclimated. I just took a little swim in the Atlantic Ocean and it had the same effect for me. So before I give any more context to this work, I'm going to be reading from a new manuscript that continues the story of the supposed pilgrim who's walking from East Grand Forks to Winnipeg using that medieval map. But first I want to say how grateful I am to be back here at the Fine Arts Work Center. It's such an amazing place, and to be with dear friends I haven't seen for years, an amazing faculty to read with James and Nick, and grateful for the stunning writers I have in my group. That it's really great working with you. The work I've seen already is just astonishing. This is such a special place, and I'm so glad to be back. Thanks to the staff for keeping the fire burning as well. And just a reminder, this is a collective, so that we all have our part. The capitalist society abhors a collective, I think. It really makes it hard to keep something like this going. So all of your support is really helpful. So this is a place dedicated to sort of twist a saying from Keats to the holiness of the imagination. And its fruits are available. Just moving around here, I see so many people that are creating amazing stuff. And so I'm grateful that that Fine Arts Work Center exists. So this piece is an imaginary pilgrimage, something I read about some years ago, and I just thought, what an interesting idea. Turns out that it's still going on. It was a real thing. Brother Matthew Paris is a real person, those maps. And he also was a writer who wrote kind of crazy histories of the medieval period. He was an actual person he actually thought there was going to be an apocalypse in 1260 and that the world would end. The world did end for him. He died in 1259. But so I also take a little bit of a theological liberty with the way I'm presenting this notion of when we get to Jerusalem, that things will all become enlightened and will be in paradise. My church is really the church of William Blake, and that's more his idea than the Catholic Church. But I'm sort of using Brother Matthew for my own purposes. So I'm going to skip around a bit for the manuscript itself. Plots out more of a narrative. There are two parts to it. There's prose. If you didn't realize that, I was reading prose first, and that was poetry second. The same thing will be taking place where the prose kind of deals with more of the factual data, and then there's a lyric kind of response that has more to do with the emotional life of this imaginary pilgrim on his walk. I built a holograph from the famous map by running it through a 3D printer. I'm sure that's the way Brother Matthew first imagined it in his moldy cell. He created it as a machine to be assembled, a sculpture constructed of wood, paste, and parchment to mirror the inadequacy of the world. Like a children's pop-up book, Brother Matthew included flaps we have to cut out and attach in order to find our way. We fold and refold mountain sections to learn the actual path. Holding the map in our hands, we understand it's an instrument to explore time. The map is shaped like rivers and trees, so we don't rush past the world's beauty. We need to see the world as it is, to imagine it as it will be. The night isn't black, but the light is. Prairie ponds oozing dim stars. I can't live in the west, but I follow the sun down, the prairie terribly beaten and blued. Mouths of the dark cloud open. Heat lightning is just lightning headed toward me. Now the night is the night we can see. Our sky's eyes bloodshot, stained silver. Prairies like stars give off heat, sweat the light back, and the vault overcasts. Clouds, studded with planets in their hair, hold off the rain. And still the light comes, raw, gutted moon on the rise. To go on pilgrimage is to write a novel. You get to sing the origin story, the first strains of the epic. Yes, I remember that temple, the smoking smudge pots. We were there together. You in the fog, me in that pathetic headband. Of course that's where it began, my unraveling, your salvation. All the walking novelists deep in thought, glaring, stealing characters from each other. That pilgrim over there is a famous, unreliable narrator, but why not? That shit sells. Also, the fictional pilgrim is a regular of the daydreaming mind, the 2 o'clock in the afternoon brain still out to lunch, traveling, enjoying dangerous spiritual feats of strength, many savings in enlightenment storm, which makes it possible to see you again, as you were, in the time you were still not quite saved. Brother Matthew is painting, or in bed imagining he's painting, his pure work of perception. He exists in sacred time, the year 1253 of his God's Son's birth. In the century next door, Chaucer's pilgrims make ready for a trip to a local shrine. They don't need his map. They're mainly out to ride. Even now, they're passing through the Kentish woods in a spring paraphrase of green. To mark the time, Matthew's 3-part God counts from when his firstborn died. He's counting up to the day the ground he made for us, made strictly out of words, melts before our eyes. In Suffolk, though, it's spring today, and mild rains pierce the drought. Chaucer says small birds sleep with open eyes. Spring nights are much too soft to miss. The pilgrims rise at dawn. They too can sense it won't last long. Now and England. Pilgrimage is an admission we don't know what love is. Love should set us free. But pilgrims are addicts, hooked on the long grind, like rats to maize cheese, walking on our knees, ringing our bells in the old mode, leper style, still stuck on the gods that love us better, suffering. Pilgrimage is an admission we wouldn't know love if it rode up and carried us off on a stolen horse. But then we don't know what air is, what lilies are, whether we're smoke or ash. I fall in love too easily. I never do it to be free. The next verse thing just has one word to note. The word sun appears. It's S-U-N, sun. The prairie's a river of scrap coal, flowered sage, crushed head of the living stone. In the eternity we know as now, I walk the prairie floating on a thickened crust of sky. I step lightly on the bones of suns. It's a miracle anything is here. All the prairie night, remnants burn on high, bonfires lighting the path of how we got away. And if I love my empty city of the plains, it's because I have to praise the ground I walk on while it's there. Look up past the western stars where nothing shines. It might be beautiful, matters wine dark, other side. If you see my beloved son, tell him I am sick of love. Pilgrimage is always about death, about gratitude for the recovered daughter, for you not dying and getting to walk back the way you came, about gearing up for the time you don't get to come back, getting a preview of what that trip actually looks like, about getting closer to the source material. To get there, pilgrims walk a scroll of earth, writing themselves into the face of the world, engraving their names on empty pages of the way. Engrave, to etch or carve, to fix indelibly. Also to excavate, to make a wound or cavity by incision, but also to bury, to place in a grave, to entomb. The long walk is almost always about talking to your lost people once more, those inscribed onto your skin, the people who, when it was time, you engraved. To my son, autumn, air washed thin by northern birds and wind blown south. Gray shack sways against September grass, then leans into the wind. You see, everything in this brightness has to move. Prairie marsh turns into crude, dried up cornfield in the cloud. This is the way we made you. Everything moving upstream against what was supposed to happen. The way we love to watch the movie reel run backwards, boy unfurling feet first from the slit of quickly healing water, ascending to the high board at the public pool. The way you proved effect sometimes is able to create the cause. Who is not a pilgrim? Acing a mythic journey doesn't make you a pilgrim. Bilbo Baggins, Beowulf, Princess Leia, Oedipus, all the poor German children sent to the dark wood, they're heroes, not pilgrims. It's true they also walk a lot, but eventually they run across a magic bird and heal its wing. That's how they get their powers. The crone they meet, she's no god. She's a representative of the subconscious sent by Jung. If they're kind to her, they're well on their way to heroic success, meaning strong ego formation, not salvation. Showing respect to the old woman is one way to come into your power as a hero. The other is to kill her. And that long-planned trip to Graceland, that's no pilgrimage. The Texas barbecue trail, way stations of the Disney World Imperium, making it to every Hard Rock cafe, they're dark nights of the soul, not Dante's woods. You'll recognize pilgrims by the way they walk, glancing nervously at the gift shop as they rush past, clutching their staffs. Why I am not a bodhisattva. Why I'm not a refugee. Why I'm not indigent. Why I'm not collateral damage. why I am not choked, why I don't have dysentery, why I am not Rohingya, why I am unable to testify, why I don't live in a trailer, why I am not undocumented, not Lakota, Palestinian, not Uyghur, why I'm not a welfare mother, why I'm no savior, no sucker or savant, no tweaker, no tuner, why I'm not really a complainer, why I'm not country music, why I'm not regularly pulled over, why I'm not stateless, why I'm not dismissed from the jury, why I am not a hostage, why I am tired, why I'm not seasonally poor, why I don't live in a cardboard box, why I am not responding, why I can walk away, why I can't change, why I am not your brother, why I am not a bodhisattva. The pilgrim interviewed by the New York Times. Do you prefer a pilgrimage that reaches you emotionally or intellectually? It's nothing much to feel. These are the last two, by the way. It's nothing much to feel. The prairie grasses I wade through can't stop vibrating, full of conviction, while being torn by longing. Miles of mycelia spread finely shaded tremors of desire underground. You can't take a step without deep emotion. Stunted prairie trees and prairie dogs, geese and flora, all of them, like us, forced to choose kindness or cruelty. Strata of Precambrian rocks mostly are emo, feeling their way through stone time. They send us lonely poetry through mountains. The earth believed in eternity, thoughts refined over 400 million centuries. It now has its doubts. All we know, everything, evolving, devolving. What is it a galaxy perceives? Imagine its field of vision, its concerns. Phobos, a moon of Mars, orbits 3,600 miles above its planet, like flying from New York to Casablanca. Where it's headed is down, captive to Mars' gravity, impact in just 50 million years. Does it know its fate? Phobos, from phobia. It has to know, the way it exudes Greek fear. It's nothing much to feel. As for thinking, try to stop. But I believe supervoids, black holes, and galaxies are trapped, frozen in place because they can think and feel, but can't imagine their way out. The prophets say it's up to us to open the floodgates and set us all free from time. We all beings of matter and non-matter, need to hunker down to sing and pray, imagining how we might lift the mountain up until it walks across the field. I walk into my origin, flax and wasted wind, Dakota gusts across my face. Brother, I'm from all this here. Limestone bones, chin of mud, grassland myths branded on my flat heart. How the lark stole its golden throat, that I know. I'm a leaking leather sack, plugged with earth, barely limping home. I resign all my tells and signs, hymns that rose from memories my father claims were his. My hides dehaired, tanned and smoke, slow blood converted into wine. The time I used, I turn back in, like lightning turning back to rain. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was beautiful. Now we're going to hear from printmaker Jim Stroud. Jim is a returning member of the Falk Summer faculty and is teaching a course this week called Jumpstart Etching, Photo Printing on Copper. Jim is a painter and master printer who is the founder and director of Center Street Studio, a professional printmaking workshop that prints and publishes contemporary prints with emerging and established artists. His work is represented in several public collections, including the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, the Pushkin Museum in Moscow, the Yale University Art Gallery, the Hood Museum of Art at Dartmouth College, and the Fogg Art Museum. Under his direction, Center Street Studio has created a richly supportive and vibrant atmosphere for artists and collaborations. He is also recognized and praised for his work with artists to publish, promote, distribute, and exhibit the works created by those artists he collaborates with. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Jim Stroud.
Thank you. I thought I would start by providing proof of my printmaking pedagogical pedigree. That's the most literary I'll get tonight, I promise. And I cut my teeth in printmaking studying with this gentleman, Stanley William Hayter, who is considered the father of the modern print. Started a workshop in Paris in 1928 called Atelier 17, and most of the great artists in Europe worked with him at that shop. And I worked with him when he turned 80 in 1980. I was there at 81. And he was a young buck in Paris in 1980. And I came back to the United States and lived in New York and applied to graduate school so I can study with this man, Gabor Petterdy, who's a great American printmaker at Yale, at the Yale School of Art. And Gabor worked with Hayter in Paris in 1930, and I worked with Hayter in Paris in 1980. So, right? And he was a great influence, both of them great influence. So I started Center Street Studio right after graduate school as a means to sort of support myself as an artist. And somehow it grew into something far beyond my intentions, but here we are. And it was started in Gloucester, where I bought the press, moved it to Boston, where I was there many years, and now we moved the whole operation to a beautiful post and beam barn my wife and I built on our property in Milton. Went up in 5 days, tight to the weather in 5 days. Beautiful. We live on a property in Milton with a 19th century farmhouse with an acre of land. Nice place, nice commute, right? And there it is as it stands today. And you can see some of the interior shots in any case. It's a beautiful shop. It's the last shop, I promise you. I'm not moving those presses anymore. So I thought what I'd do is I'd share with you some projects that I've done with artists that I think really illustrate my relationship with these artists. And Sarah used the word collaboration. And that's often used, and I sort of bridle at that a little bit because it suggests a little bit too much authorship on my part. I like to think of it more of like shake and bake, and I helped. Someone described it as like I midwife these projects into being, and I kind of like that a little bit better. Marcus Lindbrink is a German artist who showed up at my door one day, and I invited him to make a print. He's a terrific abstract painter. And we've been working together now for 20 years on various projects. This is a project, actually a painting project at the Hammer Museum in LA that he painted the entire lobby. It's one of their projects. They do revolving projects. And so when he came to me and I tried to figure out a way to best translate, and this is what I try to do, I try to figure out the best way to translate their issues in their primary medium into a print form, whether it be etching, woodcut, or monotype projects. In the case of Mark's was a monotype project, and the first couple of days of his residency were a failure. I mean, we just couldn't get anything that made any sense, and I was getting really kind of nervous. And then, as often happens in sort of those waking moments in the morning, I had this idea, and I ran out to the shop at about 6 o'clock and started playing around with the inks and changing their viscosities, and then just threw away plates and said, taped off the paper size and told him just to start painting directly onto the press bed, which you see him doing here. And this is way back in 2004, I believe. And we put the paper directly on the press. Thank you. Thank you. Right on top of that, and then crank the pressure all the way down and run it through, and that's what comes out the other side. Well, that's actually a residual print on the other side. What you saw behind us was the stuff that came off, and it was a technique that I'd never knew about, and it wasn't. I sort of made it up as I went along, and in order to sort of rescue a project and in a way that made sense and that was not antithetical to the way he works as an own studio in his primary work, and it was just hugely successful, and we continue to this day. But and they're so wet that we have to hang them up from the rafters to dry, and they stay there for a couple of weeks. It was a long time ago. This is a custom etching press I had made. It's 4 by 8 feet. And that's the residual print that's left behind on the press. There's a lot of cleanup in this project. These are the first ones we did, which were really successful. I think the name of was "Methinks You Write No Problem." Is that he hears phrases, and then he strings them together like German words, all one word. So this is "Methinks You Write No Problem," and then that would be a residual print. So after that first print was printed, there is a big pool of ink left on the press bed. We put another sheet of paper on that and run it the other direction. That's what comes out. So you get a twofer there. Oops, sorry. This is a later project called, oh gosh, I can't remember the title now. I Heard You Looking. That's the name of this series. I Heard You Looking. And again, painted directly on the press bed. And this is our most recent project called My Eyes Ablaze the Day You Break Your Mold. All eyes ablaze the day you break your mold is the name of this project. What that means, I do not know. And oops, oh, sorry about that. It's being glitchy. I'll go back, there we go. That's where my portrait came from. Yeah, so this is this happened just a couple of months ago. All right. Oh, I think I know what I'm doing here. So this next project is Kelly Sherman. She's a conceptual artist in Boston area, and she was frustrated trying to do some silk screens of a project that were failing. And so she came to me, and I suggested we do a reduction woodcut project based on it. And it was a series of silhouettes of brides that she lifted off of bridal magazines. And the reason she did it because she was a bridesmaid in 5 weddings in a summer, and she wasn't the bride. And so she carved the shapes out of blocks, and I would ink them and print them. We're using a router to pull out most of the surface inside her drawing. She'd draw the perimeter, and I would then take out the body of and here you are seeing us pull. And so it's 3 colors: the white of the paper, silver first, and then the black on top. And they were meant to be. And that's you see we do a lot of drawing from the rafters at Center Street Studio. And these are the individual prints. But again, it was another sort of a print save, you know. In my spare time, I like to move presses. People call me up all the time and say, I have a press, I need it moved. When? Tomorrow. And I have to rush and do it. And I've done it a few times. And I actually own that engine hoist in order to do it. That roller there weighs about 500 pounds. John Wilson. John Wilson is African-American artist, passed away in 2015. He was the artist who won the commission to do the bronze portrait sculpture of Martin Luther King that's in the Capitol Rotunda in Washington, D.C. And he had a drawing that was a study for that sculpture, was curated into a traveling exhibition from the Smithsonian called In the Spirit of Martin, which was an exhibition of images of Martin Luther King or images inspired by his message. And John's drawing that was owned by the MFA was used for the catalog and for all the advertising and whatnot. And then when the MFA informed them that they could only have it for 3 months as per their policy, it was a problem because they'd used, and there were going to be like 8 exhibitions that weren't going to have John's signature drawing in it. And so I suggested John come and make an etching based on that drawing at Center Street Studio, and he did. And here he is working on this enormous plate, big copper plate. And there are proofs and studies on the wall. That's actually a study. This was a warm-up print to that print. It just because he hadn't done etching in decades, and so he just did a quick. It wasn't meant to look like King. It was just to be a general portrait to get his feet wet in etching again. And then I'm going to show you the states it took to get to the final image. You're going to see all 18 states that it took John. So that's the final state. That's the beautiful print in the end. And this is what we used to replace the drawing that traveled in the Smithsonian exhibition. So that's the first state. It's sort of like an armature, and it's called a soft ground etching. And it's just sort of something to get sort of a foundation upon which to build. And John struggled really hard to get the image and the drawing to come together, the likeness and the drawing to come together, I should say. So he's adding, you can see he's adding drawing, he's adding lines, he's adding texture, but the likeness wasn't strong enough. So here he's actually starting to scrape away the work that he'd already done on the plate. You can physically scrape the metal down. So it's like erasing, but you have to physically scrape the metal down. So when I pulled this one, he's now obviously scraped everything away, and I pulled the proof for him, because every time he makes changes, I have to actually ink it up and print it so he can see what effect it's had on the plate. And he was really discouraged here, and I said, John, if you were Francis Bacon, you'd be home by now. So then we just applied what's called an aquatint to sort of darken the whole thing so we can start to sort of coax the image out. Now what's interesting here is that this is the same state as this one, but I sent him home with an extra one so he can actually erase it and draw on it so he can, oh, come on now. Oops. Okay, so from here to here, I keep putting my finger on the wrong place here. So he's actually erased on the physical print to get it to the way he wants it to look, and that was important because that became our guide, that became the place we needed to get to. And now he's adding back in with more tone. Then we had to bring it back to here, and now I had him start taking baby steps so he wouldn't go so far so fast, but then he did it again. And now we're getting close. And there's state 18. And there's the final state. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's like, I think it's probably the most important print that's come out of Center Street Studio in the 38 years I've been collaborating or working with artists publishing prints. And then here's the copper plate, which is really cool. It's actually got its steel facing still on it because I steel face it before we print the edition so it doesn't wear out during the printing. And I'm proud to say I was able to sell all 18 states, the final state, and the copper plate to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, which is really where it belongs. And this is a larger print that we did after the Martin Luther King print called Monumental Head, which is based on a drawing for his enormous bronze sculpture called Eternal Presence. Richard Ryan is an artist I've been working with for a long, long time, since 1986, and he wanted to make woodcuts, and so I told him he can do the cutting in his own studio and then bring it to me eventually. But he shows up with this enormous first woodcut. It's some 60 by 43, I think is the size, or 60 by 40, an enormous woodblock to print. And I flew my son. So we actually printed, it was done in 2007. I printed half the edition with my son when he was really younger. And never, not ever knowing whether we were going to sell them all. I sold number 19 and realized I didn't have number 19, so I had to go back and print the edition. So I flew my son back from Seattle, and he helped me with this enormous block. It takes 2 people to handle it. And here's now when we print the edition, again, hanging off the rafters here, and that's the edition, the remainder of the edition, which is pretty cool. It's a beautiful print. And there's Richard signing them. And there's what my son really does for a living. That's him in Yosemite. We flew him back from this. More on that later. There's the black version of the Blue Poppies print, which came afterwards. We don't typically do 2 colors of an edition, but in this one it really worked well. And then this is an enormous equal scale bird, big blue heron. And it's important, and now the artist has cut all this block himself, so in his own studio. So I didn't have anything to do with the actual plate making. But he came to the studio and asked me what he was doing wrong. He had an enormous print that he tried to print with a wooden spoon. The scale, it doesn't work that way. And so I was able to ink it up and put it on that big press and get beautiful, rich, dark impressions on it. And there's a beautiful landscape with another blue heron in silhouette. That's a woodcut. Yeah, they're all woodcuts, those. Yeah, those are his first woodcuts. They're enormous. It's crazy. This is a fun project. Brian Andrew Wiley is an artist in New York City, and in 2016, he when Trump was just a mere candidate, wasn't even the nominee for the GOP. He had this actual tombstone made at a Brooklyn monument shop. And the guy was actually a Trump supporter, and he told him it was an art project, and so the guy was willing to do it. And you can see he put Trump, Donald J., 1946, no death date, which comes in, it's important fact later. But look at the epitaph, "Made America Hate Again." He put that in the Sheep Meadow section of Central Park on Easter Sunday morning in 2016. Of course, it went viral on the internet with all the joggers and the walkers, and then the Park Service and the police covered it up in about 4 hours and then confiscated it, and then the big search as to who was the perpetrator, because they considered a potential death threat against the candidate. So they tracked him. They found the monument guy who gave up Brian in a minute, and then the Secret Service arrived at his house and interrogated him for 4 hours, and he convinced them it was an art project, political, it was a political sort of statement, and that he wasn't, and the fact that there's no death date was really how he convinced them that it was not a threat. In any case, I followed this whole thing on Instagram, of course, and I've known him for quite a while. And I said, so he convinced him that he wasn't a criminal, and that he wanted the stone back, and he had to actually get a lawyer to get the stone back from the evidence locker in Queens. And I said, "When are you going to get that?" And he says, "Well, I'll let you know." I said, I'll be there the next day. So I went down, and here it is, close up. It's fantastic. It weighs 450 pounds. He's a hipster, right? Here's a Brooklyn hipster. Look. And so I went down and I decided to make an edition of prints as tombstone rubbings as prints right off the tombstone. And we have an edition of 100 going. And we sold like 15 of them. People actually buy these things. And there's a video on my website of me making the first one. This is me making the first one. And they come out really great. Yeah. And there's the print. And that's that shape in the top right is actually the sticker, the barcode sticker for the evidence from the evidence locker in here. And there's actually an evidence tag taped to the top of it. And it is for sale. If anybody's interested, it's $250,000. I'm not kidding. So, like I said in the beginning, set up Center Street Studio really as a means to support myself as an artist, and it grew beyond, the studio grew beyond my expectations. But I still do try to keep some sort of studio practice of my own, and I'm going to show you some paintings that I did from a series of drawings. My wife, Janine Wong, and I were teaching in a residency in Beijing a bunch of years ago, and I made a series of drawings that sort of that reflected my observations about the density of both the built environment and the density of humanity in China. And so I had these really claustrophobic sort of architectural drawings that I made into paintings on panel. And these are about 4 by 3 feet. They're oil and metallic paints, so they all have sort of reflective surfaces. So, like John Wilson's, we saw the anatomy of that print. I'm going to give you an anatomy of one of these paintings. So that's the first state of it. which is just a silver field. There you go. And there we are. My son, for my 64th birthday, guided me up Mount Hood out in Portland, Oregon, and there we are at the summit. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, James. That was wonderful getting to see your work and several other artists that you work with. Finally, we're going to hear from writer Nick Flynn, a revered veteran of the Fogg Summer faculty who is teaching a workshop called Memoir as Bewilderment. Nick's most recent books include This is the Night Our House Will Catch Fire and Stay, Threads, Collaborations, and Conversations, which documents 25 years of his collaborations with artists, filmmakers, and composers. He is also the author of 5 collections of poetry, including I Will Destroy You. His memoir, Another Bullshit Night in Suck City, was made into a 2012 film starring Robert De Niro and has been translated into 15 languages. Kirkus Reviews describes Nick's work as a collage that mixes narrative, criticism, fantasy, and self-reflection, and adds that his remarkable and daring work has an uncommonly nuanced voice and sensibility. His readers praise the uniqueness and emotional truth of his work and admire the voice and insights throughout his beautiful, brave books. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Nick Flynn.
Hi, everybody. Really glad to be here. Thanks. It was great slideshow. Thank you, James. And Mark, beautiful poems. It's so good to be back in this new room, this room, and also that book Stay that Sarah just mentioned. Some of my people I collaborated with are in the room now, and so if you want to get one of the copies, they'll sign it for you. I just offered that. If you can find them, I know who they are. For my workshop. My wonderful workshop I'm doing this week. I'm hoping everyone reads something new, something we created in the workshop. So I'm going to do that first. I'm going to read something that I wrote in the workshop to start us out. First thing, I'm going to look and see what time it is, so I don't go forever. I won't go forever. Don't worry. This doesn't have a title. It's just from an exercise that we did in class. And I based this on an image by Gregory Crutzen. We know the TV is on by the light on their faces. We know the light on their faces is made by TV. The TV is full of faces, each face made of light. Their faces are made of the light in the TV. Their faces look in the same direction at the TV. We know it is night by the light in the windows. We know it is summer by the blanket on the floor. We know this is America by the walls made of plastic. We know it is the father inside of his chair. We know it is the daughter. We've seen her before. She can rise up at any time. The TV is on. It spills light onto the carpet. The TV is filling them with another family. The family on TV sits on a couch watching TV. The family on TV is bathed in blue light. This light pours from their eyes. This light pours from each word. And inside the TV is a lamp, and the father inside the TV pulls a chain to kill it. Good night, honey. Good night, Dad. The walls are the same color as the couch. The couch is the same color as the lampshade. The lampshade is the same color as the father. The daughter's face is so white that it glows in the dark. Her legs glow in the dark. A strip of her belly glows in the dark. Good night, light. Good night, TV. Good night, everything. So, So that's just a challenge to my class, to read something you wrote in class this week. Do you accept that challenge? And also, James mentioned Francis Bacon, so I'm going to sort of read something that has a little Francis Bacon in it. Yeah, I'll read this. This is called Notes on a Monument to Ether. Do people know that monument to ether? The Boston people? Anyone know that? It's like, no one knows that. Well, yeah, a couple people do. Yeah, it's this thing in Boston Common, the Public Garden, this big monument to ether. I'm writing these sort of short essays, so I'm going to read like 2 of those to continue. And this one's called Notes on a Monument to Ether. One might think it would be somewhat ethereal, perhaps a large jar with steam rising from it continuously, or perhaps something made simply of lights, but no. It is a man perched atop a pillared tower. He is seated, and draped across his lap is another man, nearly naked, who seems to be unconscious. The man holding the other man is, for some reason, wearing a fez. The man in the fez is meant to represent the disputed whomever who discovered that ether could be used as an anesthetic. The first successful demonstration of this was at the nearby Massachusetts General Hospital, where my brother was born, in a surgical theater that is now known as the Ether Dome. The origin of the word ether is akin to the Greek athein, which means to burn brightly, and to the Sanskrit ethidris, of or like the brilliance of a clear sky. Neither shall there be any more pain is etched into the side of the tower. It comes from the book of Revelation and points to the place where there truly is no pain, which, as far as we know, is death. In this life, when it comes to pain, you can either feel it or you can numb it. Yet spend too long in that realm, wrestling with whatever it is you hope to numb yourself from feeling, and soon enough, very little else will matter. Revelation is another word for apocalypse, which I always thought signaled the end of the world. But the word apocalypse comes from the Greek apokalypsis, a derivative of the verb apokalyton. Sorry for my pronunciation of the Greek. To take the cover off. The word revelation comes directly from the Latin revelare, to unveil, uncover, lay bare. See, reveal. To uncover in the sense that it is revealing some deeper truth. In my 20s, when I lived in Boston, I would have passed this statue nearly every day, yet I didn't take it in. It never spoke to me. I never looked up to see the man lying in another man's arms, a pieta. This says something about the statue and something about me. Did I even have a deeper truth? My friend Richard, who I lived with in that abandoned strip joint, had just tested positive. I was working in the shelter. I knew everyone who slept outside by name. I knew my father's name, the way he used it as a blanket. If asked, I'd tell you the apocalypse had come a couple years earlier, and now we all were simply walking through the ruins. Now we were walking in its shadows. Now we were painting curtains on plywood to make the abandoned buildings look lived in. But I was using the word wrong. I wasn't seeing what had been uncovered. I stopped to look at a box on the sidewalk and realized someone was alive inside it. The word anesthesia is from the Greek anastasia, lack of feeling. It was in Boston that I began to consider myself a poet. Yet or so, I anesthetized myself daily with basically whatever I could find. For most days it seemed I just felt too much. Neither shall there be any more pain. What I felt created a tension in my soul, for I could not transform it into words. I now believe tension is essential for all art. Yet for me, at this time in my life, it was not a useful tension. I didn't know how to use it. Anesthesia is the negation of the root aesthete, from the Greek aesthesis, a keen perceiver. Though I called myself a poet, I was clearly not a keen perceiver. These Greek words all derive from astronomia, akin to Latin audio, I hear. If I couldn't see, what did I hear? I did know someone, a poser, who had business cards printed up with his name and one word below it, aesthete. That he spent most of his time down on my level made me doubt it. Milton's Paradise Lost 1667, contains the first recorded use of ether in the poetic sense of heavenly or celestial. The word ether first appears before 1398, the year Trevisia's translation of Bartholomew's De Proprietatis Rerum appeared. The etymological dictionary defines ether as the upper regions of space, constituent substance of stars and planets. Ether was both the stuff the planets were floating in and the stuff the planets were made of. It was what we now call dark matter, and we now admit that we know essentially nothing about it. Essentially, that's another word like ethereal. It comes from the word essence, which also came into use sometime before 1398, around the years the Canterbury Tales were being written. Essence comes from the Greek ousa, being or essence. The general sense of essence as the most important or basic element of anything is first recorded in 1656 in Hobbes' translation of Elements of Philosophy. Essence, see is. The main reason to take drugs is for the promise of the pain to go away. Feeling no pain is what we used to answer if asked how we were after a few beers. To be or not to be. It only becomes a problem if we take them to the point where there is no is. Francis Bacon's Triptych, in memory of George Dyer, is a tribute to his lover, who took his life on the evening of Bacon's greatest, up to that point, success. Bacon's painting was influenced by his reading of Eliot's The Wasteland, especially the lines, "I have heard the key turn in the door. We think of the key, each in his prison," which Bacon represents in the central panel, in which a figure, Dyer, turns a key in a lock. Eliot's Prufrock starts with this simile: "Let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky, like a patient etherized upon a table." The invocation of ether signals that we have entered a dream world of altered perception, not altered in the sense of heightened perception, but more in the sense of a deadening of perception. The great tension in the poem is that Prufrock perceives, yet cannot deeply feel. Bacon's bodies are often cut open, dissected, flayed. Michelangelo would cut up cadavers in order to learn human anatomy. As it was illegal at the time to desecrate a body, he had to do this in secret, in a back room of the Church of Santo Spirito. Santo Spirito, Holy Spirit, another essence, something impossible to hold on to. Michelangelo, searching for something inside us he could hold on to, something essential. It is said that cutting these bodies open left him with a taste for nothing but bread and water. Bread is essential. Water is essential. It is the most basic elemental sentence. It is raining. It is broken. It is full. It is finished. It is finished is one of the 7 last words or phrases of Jesus. It isn't is always just on the other side. Okay, that's one. And now I'll read this next one. So these will be the 2 I read. This is also references Gregory Crutzen. I think you guys know who that is. Maybe you don't. You can look him up. Photographer. Stages these sort of beautiful, strange sort of theatrical photographs. This is called Want, or Notes on a Photograph by Gregory Crutzen. A car left at a stoplight in the middle of a street in a small town. The headlights still on, the driver's door open, the passenger still in her seat. The passenger is lit up by the interior light. There's a Hindu saying, "You can get what you want, but what do you want?" She could lean over and pull the driver's door shut and the light would go out. She could lean over and turn the knob and the headlights would go out. Is that what she wants, or what I want? Where's the driver? The car is oversized, American. You had a car like that when we met. You'd bought it off your uncle or your grandfather. You'd drive it down to the city to find me. Everything was moving so fast then. At least that's how it seemed. We needed somewhere to be. It might as well have been in that car. As a kid, I learned or dreamed or heard about something called astral projection. You could lay down, close your eyes, and your astral body would rise up away from the cage of your physical body. The astral body could travel anywhere through space and time. It was a way out, but of what? My room? Where would I go? What did I want? To want, the emotion involved with lack, the way deprivation is manifest, a hole that cannot be filled. From the Old English, 1498, wan, lacking in blood or energy. Before I die, this is what I want to hear. A woman left in a car at a stoplight in the middle of a street in a small town. Fog is coming up behind her, or maybe she is already in the middle of it. Fog is something else you can't see when you're in the middle of it. It creates a bubble of light around you as everything beyond it falls slowly away. One morning, a woman, young, beautiful, approached me in the East Village. "Are you looking too?" she asked. I knew what she was saying. I could have said yes, and we would have gone off together in search of her want. But at that moment, it wasn't my want. A couple years earlier, it would have been, and I would have gladly gone with her in search of it. Your oversized American car, you lent it to a friend and he totaled it. You let him use it and it never came back. The next time it was my turn. I had to find a car, so I took my girlfriend's mother's car. Her mother was in the hospital. My girlfriend was at her bedside. The streetlight turns from yellow to red to green and back over and over, like a song on repeat. I drove it straight to you. The verb to want came into use around 1200. Wanton, be lacking, be without, borrowed from Old Norse vanta, to want, see, wane. The original notion of lack was extended to need, and from this developed in 1706 the sense desire. What happened in 1706 to transform need into desire? Her mother's in the hospital? I know. What did you tell her? I needed something in the city. What did you say you needed? She didn't ask. She's with her mom in the hospital. I know. The astral and physical body are connected by means of a cord, along which vital currents flow. It is a perfect replica of the physical body in which it is housed. It is made of lighter stuff, luminous, translucent. The idea that there could be two of me made sense. The promise that I could come back, that I could travel space and time, and in the morning my mother would find me in my bed just where she left me. In the movies, the woman waves out the back of the car window as it pulls away, and the way she gets smaller and smaller is a slow motion vanishing, smaller and smaller until she is gone. We know it's a trick, an illusion. We know that all along it was me who had found a way to vanish in plain sight, to stand before you, a perfect replica, and let your hands pass right through me. It's dawn. No one in town is awake yet, except her. She could turn the dial on the radio until something came back to her, something she remembered. Is this the bad thing she was warned about? Back then, there was something lacking in nearly everything I touched. With you, it transformed into desire. It met yours whenever we put ourselves in the same city. It was like the wind, how it shapes itself into whatever it encounters. Just by moving toward it, becomes. Oh, Alexa. Was that Siri, I guess? Oh, Siri. It's like becoming a choral reading. Me and Siri. The astral and physical body are connected by means of a cord. Before the silver cord snaps and the golden fountain, and this is from the Bible, Ecclesiastes. Before the silver cord snaps and the golden fountain is shattered, and the pitcher breaks at the fountain, and the wheel falls shattered into the pit, and the dust returns to earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Ecclesiastes. The silver cord is what connects us to ourselves. A woman waits in a car at a stoplight in the middle of a street at dawn. Maybe it's not so bad. Maybe he or she will come back, bring her something sweet from the gas station, gummy worms, or vinegar and salt chips. Maybe a jug of red gasoline, if that's the problem. Maybe there is no problem. The sun is just coming up. The street is empty. The store's all closed. To speak your name is to build a city of fog. You could have taken the train. I need to be back tonight. Tonight. Train stopped running. I didn't know you were going back tonight. I don't know if she's going to make it, the mother. Yeah? It's a hard time to end things. I can imagine. It's a tricky operation. You can live with one kidney, so she tells me. Unless it fails, then you need to find another one. I'd set up my life as a series of rooms that had too many doors. Some I forgot I'd even entered. If you entered one of these rooms, what would you find? I'd sometimes be there, but more often I was in my car where I felt safe. Though I couldn't tell you the danger. Danger can sometimes live so close it is like breath or a shadow. The fog is coming closer now, rolling in, as they say. Maybe it's coming from a machine. Maybe this is a movie set, a movie about a small town, a main street, a lunch place, a dollar store, a place you can still go to buy a padlock, a hammer. It is dawn. She is waiting. Did someone tell her to wait? Did he say he'd be right back? Did he know that she would just sit there until he came back? Are you looking too? White lines painted on black tar. They tell you where to stop, where to park, where not to be. The streetlight turns from green to red to yellow. The green is sudden, unlike the fog, which is slow in coming. It makes the world outside appear as outlines, but soon even these dissolve. Is this what I wanted, to be inside it? I didn't want to see what blurred beyond. I'd smudge it with my eyes. Your house can be made of fog. Your childhood is mostly fog. Your mother held you with hands of fog. The seat makes a sticky noise when she moves her thigh. A fly becomes a sound in her head. Outside, the smell of rain. My brother calls it ozone, the smell of rain on tar. It's dawn. The birds are waking. The sidewalk trees come alive with them, like a switch being flipped, unseen. In an alley, a dog has found a bone, but to us it's only the sound of it, slowly wearing away beneath its teeth. The fog is seeping into everything now. You know, I have a daughter now. She's building a world on her computer. She leads me into it to show me her storehouse of weapons, the garden that needs no sun, a box of chickens, a shield that can kill. Each day we get a few minutes together. Mostly it's the two of us staring into the fridge, wondering if there's anything we could possibly eat. I have a cellar full of carrots, she tells me. Everything is made of what it is not, even dirt. Dirt wants seed, seed wants water. Take any piece of it away and it becomes a ghost who wants. I was a ghost all those years, the space left in the driver's seat, the door left open. Or were you my ghost, the interior light falling on you, giving you shape? If I closed the door, would you disappear? A car left at a stoplight, the door open, the wind carving you out of nothing. The car could sit here for another hour. No one will notice because no one is yet awake. The interior light is still on, which makes the car feel like a snow globe. The town is still dark, but there you are, as the light turns from lack to need to desire, as the wind takes the shape of you. This is what I didn't tell you, not to keep anything from you, but because I didn't know it myself until I dreamt it. My wants, I saw them in a field, and I went to them with a net. The net caught them all, and I carried them down to the pond. I planned to drown them, but they gnawed their way out. Now, whenever I swim, they will be swimming beside me. I simply wanted them to stay outside of me, but there they were again. Again, I was driving at night. I left a message. I'd be there in an hour. In an hour, you'd open the door. Maybe you'd leave it open. I'd go in, find you in bed. Your room looked a lot like my room. It had many doors. Most of them I never opened. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for everything. When we die, some of us will get our own planets, and some will end up back with everyone we ever loved. Those who get their own planets, they will order furniture from a catalog to fill it. Or they will just think it, chair, and it will appear just as they imagined. Milton, after he went blind, desperate to finish Paradise Lost, his amanuensis would come by each morning to take his dictation. The book was inside him, and she was the only way he could get it out. The day she was late, he'd wander room to room, muttering, "I need to be milked," staggering through his paradise, his robe open, unashamed of his nakedness. I need to be milked. This is what I want. There's still time. The fog has not yet reached us. Thank you.
Can we get Jim and Mark back? Yeah, perfect. Yes. And we'll have a little Q&A.
I don't know.
A little close to Jane.
Anyone have any questions?
Yeah,
Can we just ask?
Siri does.
that's right.
Is this on? Yeah. This is an awkward moment. The awkward moment. Yes, thank you.
Wonderful reading. I actually, this is to the writers in the group, though actually it also applies to our artists as well, is that I saw a strain of spiritual vocabulary that was sort of appropriated from different sources and then sort of mingled with like sort of modern anxiety. I kind of wanted you to sort of talk about how you, in your daily life, negotiate with that.
That's a hard question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little nervous, like that the word appropriation, because I think that could be considered a bad thing. But yeah, I'm not really sure. Like, I feel like just taking from various sources just feels like part of just being alive. Like, it feels like the whole, project now. I mean, we have, so much is available to us. And so much is, does sort of, from other cultures answers like questions that we have, or poses more interesting questions that I don't really feel that constrained by it, by like a need to if I could only if I was only gonna stick with my culture, I'd just write about leprechauns, I guess, but and that would be really terrible. So I mean, but there's some good leprechauns too. Yeah, sorry, Mark. Yeah.
And I just got my Irish citizenship, so watch it.
Yeah, no, thanks for starting that way. So I'm a sampler of all of these various traditions and learn from them. And so, I mean, it reflects my actual life, I guess. And it's happening. It's really an interesting project to have this imaginary pilgrim. And so I'm negotiating some of that territory in the writing of what is it that I can speak about through this other person. I can certainly take that in, and I've been interested really since I was a teenager in various traditions, and never finding one that fit except the William Blake, So I am appropriating William Blake and using him as I wish, I guess. So, yeah, I think there is a difference between what I can feel comfortable doing in my life, which is anything, and then how that is portrayed on the page. And so I do sometimes feel that I need to be very careful in the way that I do that. And as Nick is saying, appropriation is it's such a charged word that I want to not even have that come up. So that's the way I would answer.
Yeah, I think just, culturally too, just from the past, like the Greeks, borrowed from the Thracians, and the Romans borrowed from the Greeks, and the Egyptians, and the culture. It was all intermingled. All the myths and stuff are all intermingled, and the Bible is all goes back to like other traditions, and Shakespeare is born for everyone. Like I don't know. I'm just like I'm much more comfortable with it. Like I'm not, I'm open to the arguments on the other side of it, but I feel it's sort of part of the whole culture. So it sort of keeps the culture alive. So for myself. Yeah, Joe is in our workshop, and we'll be unlocking those secrets on Thursday. You'll be doing it on Thursday. You'll be getting the whole thing. Basically, it is like the idea of a closed image system, though. They did just like a handful of images, and like tonight, your homework for tonight is sort of like to choose those images, like to choose those things, then sort of commit to them and sort of keep deepening them. So like Fogg, in that last piece, like there's really just a handful of images that just keep getting repeated. The car, the interior light, the fog. There's some art references, but the art references all sort of feed back to there's a memory that sort of keeps weaving in and out of it. But it really sort of like it's almost like trying to limit, like to limit the palette so that it's not like you can't get everything into art. So you sort of try to it's all about restraint and constriction in some way. So to limit it and then sort of try to deepen those things to make them resonate a little bit more. And they take a while. Those essays take a while to write. They're not like the first one I read, which I just wrote this morning in 7 minutes with you guys. They sort of it is sort of keep trying to sort of go back to it in many drafts. Almost it's like the 18 drafts. It did make sense to me too. Like it made sense. Like that seems like the right number to sort of like start something and erase something. It really was. I'm glad you pointed that out. That is like the process of writing or probably any creation. Starting, going forward, then going too far and having to go back and change it, and then find the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up because my position in that project and all the projects, but that one in particular. As an artist who is also, who's a catalyst, I see myself almost like a catalyst to some of these projects, and where it didn't exist before, and then it exists, and then all of a sudden it exists, and to be part of that is, for me, is one of the greatest charges. It's electrifying to be part of that, and we sort of I get lost in the process. I'm very good at this particular process of etching, and understand that it has to go through a process of becoming and then changing and becoming again, and it's illustrated so beautifully in that series of slides, because there was a real struggle there. I mean, he was in the shop for about a month making that plate, and it was trying to find that place where the likeness, which is not necessarily a photographic likeness, it's more of a spiritual likeness, but to get the likeness and the drawing, the character of the drawing, to come together in one place was so difficult, and it was astounding when it happened. And to be part of that, for me, it's astounding. It's just astounding to me. And it's as an artist, we all start with nothing, and we build it, and we try to get to a place where it makes some sense and is meaningful to us, and hopefully meaningful to others. And it's that struggle. And I have the sort of bonus to be able to do it on my own in my own work, but then also be part of it in others. And that's a great place to be. Early on, because I'm a small publisher with not a lot of funding, I had to do it all through sort of sweat equity and just, and I would go to New York and go to public spaces like or nonprofit spaces like White Columns or the Drawing Center, and I'll be in a gallery and I'll see someone's work and I'll stand in front of the work and I'll look at it, and if the gears in my head start turning, where if I do this, and if we do this, and we do this, we can make a really meaningful print that makes sense based vis-a-vis on, you know, their ideas and their primary medium. And then I just call them up, you know, and say, let's go. In the case of John Wilson, however, he was brought to me by a third-party publisher in New York to do a very particular project, and that was very successful. I was a hired gun on that. I was a contract printer. It's something I don't particularly like to do because I don't like working for the man. And so, but after that project was done, John wanted to continue on, and he told me, he lamented that the problem he had about this drawing in the exhibition that was going to be pulled, and he needed something. He was concerned about it, and that's why I invited him to make the Martin Luther King print. But that's generally the way it goes. I mean, if the work moves me and I start building a print in my head, you know, I create these sort of technical strategies, and I think we can do it. I propose the project, and then I fund it, and the artist comes to me, and I fund it, and then we become 50%, you know, partners in the project, and I become the primary dealer as well. Yeah.
There's something about that, those 18 drafts of it, like, it's really such a good lesson just not to give up, because, like, a lot of us, like, if we sort of were writing a poem, and we got to, like, the 10th one, and it just, like, was terrible, we just say, okay, I just abandon it and go away. But yet, somehow, you probably helped him to see, like, no, okay, we just have to do this, like, to try to do this, or was that, like, part of it? Like, just say, like, if you just erase this and start again, or just do this?
Yeah, there was some technical skills that John didn't have, and the scraping away, when you scrape that copper down, you have to do it in a way that you don't go too far, and John was very good at going too far too fast. And literally I had to pull the reins in by state 15. When you saw me, I blackened the entire thing out again with something called an aquatint. And yet what's great about it is all those earlier decisions are still sort of embedded in the plate, so you can still see earlier decisions. And so I had to literally give him a lesson in sort of gently scraping it down and almost like feathering it, you know, to be able to bring up those whites and those grays again. And then the very last thing was to get those white highlights. But that plate was so tooled, so worked, that to print it, the skill to print it was really hard, because if you inked and wiped it, traditionally it would not look like that. And I had to resurrect a 19th century technique called retroussage in order to bring the ink, you know, wipe it down and then bring it back up and to soften it. And it has that almost like a charcoal worked face, which is really unusual in etching. And it worked out perfectly for that print. But if you handed that plate to another printer, it'd be really interesting to see if they could conjure that image back up like that again, you know. But yeah, that was a struggle. It was a real struggle, but it got done. I mean, it's one of those things that just it appeared and it was like outside myself. It's like, how did this happen? And it's a really beautiful spiritual print. So, you know, it's in a lot of really wonderful museum collections. We still have a copy ourselves hanging in our home in the studio. And but it was an edition of 50, and they sold out relatively quickly, as you can imagine. Yeah.
Remember, tomorrow or Thursday night